Hey everyone. So this is going to be ISO1, imaginary solutions. Okay, so not to be confused with INO1, okay? Imaginary numbers, imaginary solutions of quadratic functions. Okay, so there are instances, obviously we know, that when you solve a quadratic, it doesn't have any real solutions. But that doesn't mean that it's not solvable. It means that it has just complex or imaginary solutions. So basically what that means is, it means the quadratic, because it doesn't have real solutions, it doesn't cross the x-axis at all. It means it's either hovering kind of above the x-axis, or if it was flipped, it would be kind of underneath or below the x-axis, okay? But we still have to represent those solutions with I. Now, factoring them by inspection is a little bit more difficult because there's no real way of doing that except for trying to find out what two i's you can multiply together. But when they're given in standard form and the quadratic formula is available, it's a lot easier, okay? So let's remember the quadratic formula with our a, b, and c, and let's go ahead and try and solve a couple as best as we can. Okay, so negative b, so negative b is negative 5, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 25, minus 4, times a, which is 6, times c, which is 6, all over 2 times a, which is 12. Okay, so what happened to my calculator? Why did you take it from me? It was a terrible thing you did. Now I have to walk all the way over here and get my calculator. See, calculator, okay. All right, so the square root of 25 minus 4 times 6 times 6. Oh, I didn't change that on my calculator to give me the non-real answer. Sorry. 25 minus 4 times 6 times 6. Okay, so it's negative 119. Okay, so what's going to happen here is I'm going to go ahead and maybe I'll keep it. So negative 5 plus or minus the square root of negative 119 over 12. Okay, so obviously now we know this is the reason that there's an imaginary solution, because the discriminant, which is the square root of b squared minus 4ac, is a negative number. So I know I'm going to have a couple of non-real solutions. So remember that we break this down into the square root of 119 times the square root of negative 1, okay? And that square root of negative 1 is where I comes from. So let's break it down a little bit more. Negative 5 plus or minus I root 119. Now, the square root of 119 cannot be simplified. That radical cannot be simplified. Now, sometimes I will ask you to give me the decimal value, but not in this instance. So your test will give you answers that are simplified radicals. And that's going to be all over 12. Okay, now, take a look and see if there's anything that we can simplify here. I can't simplify the negative 5. There's no coefficient of I in 12. My final answer is this. Negative 5 plus or minus this I root 119 over 12. And remember, they are two non-real solutions. It's the plus version of this and the minus version of this. All right? Let's go over ahead and do number 2. Remember, we've got our a, b, c. Negative b, which is 4. Plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 16, minus 4 times 10 times 4, all over 20. Okay. The discriminant, again, will, it better be a negative number because I don't think I created ones that wouldn't. 16 minus 4 times 10 times 4. So negative 144. Okay. So 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 144, going to be over 20. Okay, now this one's going to be a little bit different because when I take the negative 1 away and I simplify that radical, I'm going to have a perfect square. Okay, so I'm going to have that 12 version. So this is going to be 4 plus or minus 12i over 20. Okay. Now I can simplify because all three of these terms have something simplifiable, and that's a 4. So if I divide by 4 on all three of these numbers, I'm going to get plus or minus 3i over 5. And that should, 1. 1 plus or minus 3i over 5. And again, there are two solutions there because it's both the plus and the minus version of that. Okay, so you see how we were able to simplify these three terms because they all had something in common? And we could not simplify that now. Like if this was a 10, we still could not simplify those two because there'd have to be something simplifiable there. All right, so I'm going to move 2 ahead. I'll go ahead and have you pause me and see if you can get the answer for those two. And I'll erase this nonsense. So while I'm doing this, you can pause me. You didn't pause me. It's okay. It's fine. You know what? You do you. All right. So I'm going to put the answers up there. Hopefully you got the right answer. All right. Now I know it says it here as in 2 separate answers, but just remember the plus and minus. So you could just make this 1 Wait a minute, what happened here? Is that the same answer? Oh no, it's 24 on the bottom. That's weird. Okay, so it's plus or minus here. Now the -4 stays, but it's plus or minus, okay? Peace.